Okay, Unit 7 test review. Number 1 and 2 say to solve with square root property, which means you have to get whatever is squared alone. So on number 1, you'll notice that what is squared is this whole piece, and it is already alone. So we can go ahead and take the square root of both sides. Square root cancels the squared on the left, and I have 5x plus 1 equals, and then I have to break down my 20. So 20 is 2 and 10, and 2 and 5, so I have a pair of 2 and a 5 left over. And then don't forget your plus and minus. So now I have to get x by itself. So I'm going to subtract 1, and I have 5x equals negative 1 plus or minus 2 root 5. And then I have to divide by 5. Well, if I separate my denominator, I can see that 1 over 5 doesn't simplify and 2 over 5 doesn't simplify. So this is my answer, and I can rewrite it as a single denominator because nothing simplified and both of the denominators stayed 5. So I have on the top negative 1 minus 2 root 5 over 5, and then negative 1 plus 2 root 5 over 5. Okay, and then look at number 2. Again, we need to get what's squared alone. So this time we do have a number in front. That number in front is multiplying because there's no symbol in between, or there's parentheses, which means multiply. So we are going to divide both sides by 4. And I'm left with 2x minus 3 squared equals negative 8. So now that what's squared is alone, I can square root both sides. Okay, so I square root, cancels the squared, and I have 2x minus 3 equals, well, that first off, I have to make imaginary because I had a negative on the inside. And let's break down our 8. So 8 is 2 and 4, which is 2 and 2. So I have a pair of 2's and a 2 left over. So positive and negative. Take out a 2, don't forget your I, and a 2 left over. Now I have to get x by itself. So plus 3, and now I divide by 2. So I'm, again, going to separate my denominator. And you'll notice that these 2's do cancel. Now 3 over 2 does not simplify. So my answer ends up being 3 over 2 minus I root 2, and 3 over 2 plus I root 2. So that is my square root property. And then remember, you use that one when there's no b term, or it's really easy to get what's squared alone and there's no b term. Okay, so let's look at solving by factoring. So remember, when a is 1, you do not have to do the box. You'll still do it right if you do the box correctly. You'll still get the right answer, but you do not have to. So here, it already equals 0. So A is 1, B is 2, C is negative 15. Remember, A times C on top, B on bottom. So 1 times negative 15 is negative 15. B is 2, and we're looking for what multiplies to give me negative 15 and adds to give me 2. It's going to be 3 and 5, and it's going to be a negative 3. So negative 3 times 5, and you can always double check it. Negative 3 times 5 is negative 15. Negative 3 plus 5 is positive 2, so it worked. Now, because A was 1, we do not have to do the box. So we know x times x is x squared, and then we can literally just bring down our side numbers. But we're not done. You factored, but you have not solved by factoring. So now you separate and set them both equal to 0 because of the zero factor property. So zero factor property, remember, that's just, we talked about that a little bit, it just means that one of them has to equal 0. So that's when it's already factored. You set both of them equal to 0, and you solve. So plus 3, x equals 3, minus 5 minus 5, x equals negative 5. So my answer is negative 5, 3. So number 4 is similar, just different numbers. A is 1 again, so we have A, B, C. A is 1, B is 5, C is negative 14. So A times C on top, B on bottom. A 1 times negative 14 is negative 14. B is 5. So it's going to be what multiplies to give you negative 14 and adds to give you 5 is going to be 7 and 2. And you're going to have a positive 7 and a negative 2. And again, check your work if you're doing it yourself and not doing it in the calculator. 7 times negative 2 is negative 14. Okay, and 7 plus negative 2 is 5. So, because A was 1, we do not have to do the box. X times x is x squared, and then just bring down your side, your split B. Separate and solve because of the zero factor property. And I have minus 7, x equals negative 7, plus 2, x equals 2. So we have negative 7, 2, which y'all should be at this point writing in least to greatest when it's super obvious, like on these two. Okay, number 5, A is not 1, and there is no GCF. 5 does not go into 6 or 17, and 5 is prime, so there's no GCF. So let's find our A, B, and C. A is 5, B is negative 17, and C is 6. A times C on top, B on bottom. 5 times 6 is 30. B is negative 17. Now when your top number is positive and your bottom number is negative, I want you to remember that's when you have a double negative. Okay, because 2 negatives multiply to give you a positive and add to give you a negative, and it's going to be 2 and 15. And again, if you're doing it on your own, check your work. Negative 2 times negative 15 is positive 30. Negative 2 plus negative 15 is negative 17, so we did it correctly. Now we have to do the box, because A is not 1. So A is 5x squared. Our last term is plus 6. And our split B, remember you're going to put your x's behind them, so negative 2x, negative 15x. And just a reminder, you're always going to have an x here and here because these both have an x and those both have an x. This does not have an x, so this won't and this won't. And this is negative, so this is going to be subtraction. This is negative, so this is going to be subtraction. Now we're doing GCFs. I always start with my smallest number. Does 2 go into 5? No. 2 is prime, so this is only 1. 6 does not go into 15, but 3 goes into both. And again, if you don't remember, you can do math, right? 9, 6, 15, and it tells me 3. Does 5 go into 15? Yes, it does. Okay, and does 2 go into 6? Yes, it does. And then again, you can also check your work with multiplying. 5 times 1 is 5. 2 times 1 is negative 2. Well, negative 2 times 1. Negative 2 times negative 3 is positive 6. 5 times negative 3 is 15, so it worked. So my factors are x minus 3, you don't have to put the 1, and 5x minus 2. And because of the zero factor property, we separate and set them both equal to 0. Oh, minus 3. Dang it, don't do that. That says minus. So plus 3, x equals 3, plus 2, 5x equals 2, divide by 5, divide by 5. So I get 2/5 and 3. Okay, the next 3 say to use quadratic formula. Just a reminder, your quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. I will have it on the board during your test to help you. Now, when it's not a word problem, you cannot just type it in the calculator. You have to simplify it on your own. So we're just going to make sure it equals 0 and find our a, b, and c. So we're going to set up our skeleton. And we're going to plug in. So B, B, A, C, A. And simplify our three pieces. So our first piece is this one. 2 negatives makes a positive. 2 times 3 is 6. And then we type just what's under the house, not the house. My calculator's been working this whole time, and now it will not. Thank you. Okay, so just what's under the house. Parentheses, -4 squared. No square root. I did not type the square root. -4, parentheses 3, not -3. Parentheses -7, and I get 100. Well, I know 100 is a perfect square, and if you're not sure, y'all, you can always square root it and see it is. It gave me a number without a house, so I get 10. So this becomes 4 plus or minus 10 over 6. So now it's a calculator problem. We're going to type 4 plus 10 over 6 and 4 minus 10 over 6 in our calculator. And then second, enter, change it to minus, and we get -1 and 7 over 3. Okay, number 7, sorry. So again, find your A, B, and C. I'll pick a different color. A is 5, B is -8, C is 4. So the reason I found A, B, and C right away is because it already equals 0. Okay, so I'm going to plug it into my formula. And I have B is -8, -8, A is 5, and C is 4. Okay, and then we're going to simplify again the three pieces. So a double negative becomes a +8. 2 times 5 is 10. And again, we type just what's under the house. So we get -8 squared minus 4 times 5 times 4. And I get -16. So again, 16 is a perfect square. If you didn't notice that though, just a reminder, you would take your 16 and break it down. You would get 2 and 8, 2 and 4, 2 and 2. Well, look, you have a pair of 2s, a pair of 2s. No leftovers, therefore no more house. Now it is negative, so I do have to put an I. Okay, so you have 2 and 2, which is 4. So I'm going to rewrite this as 8 plus or minus 4i, and I'm going to break apart my denominator. Divide by 10, divide by 10. Because remember, if you're going to simplify, you have to separate your denominator. So 8 over 10 does simplify. If you struggle simplifying fractions, alpha, y equals enter 8 over 10, your calculator will simplify it for you. So it becomes 4 over 5 plus or minus, and then you can do alpha, y equals enter 4 over 10, which becomes 2 over 5. Don't forget your I. You can't type the I in the calculator, okay? And so there's my answer, so I'm going to separate it. Now, if you notice, my denominators are both 5, so I can put it back together if I want to, and I have 4 minus 2i over 5 and 4 plus 2i over 5. However, if you wrote it separate, that is totally fine as well. Okay, number 8. Again, it equals 0, so we're good to go. A equals 2, b equals negative 4, c equals 3. So we're going to go ahead and plug it into our formula. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root, b squared minus 4 times a times c, all over 2a. And I have negative 4, a is 2, c is 3. And again, we break apart the 3 pieces. So 2 negatives makes a positive. 2 times 2 is 4. And then just what's under the house. So negative 4 squared minus 4 times 2 times 3. And that gives me negative 8. So first off, I have a negative. I have to get rid of that, and I'm going to put an I. Okay, 8 I have to break down. It is not a perfect square, so I have 2 and 4, 2 and 2. So I have a pair of 2's and a 2 left over. So I'm going to rewrite this as 4 plus or minus 2I root 2. And I'm going to go ahead and separate my denominator. Well, 4 divided by 4 is 1. And 2 over 4 simplifies to 1/2. So there's my answer. So I have 1 minus 1I root 2 over 2, and 1 plus 1I root 2 over 2. Okay, so let's go ahead and flip to number 9. Okay, so now it says it's your choice of which method you use. So you get to choose. On number 9, I want you to realize that there is no b term, so I would choose the square root method. Right away, I'm going to get whatever squared alone. So I need to get x squared alone. So I'm going to divide both sides by 10. And I have x squared equals negative 20. And now that my squared is alone, I'm going to square root both sides. Square root cancels my squared, and I have x equals, I just took the square root of a number, so positive and negative. It was negative, so I put an I, and let's break down 20. So 2 and 10, 2 and 5. So 2i, don't forget your I. I've seen a lot of people forgetting their i's, root 5. So negative 2i root 5, positive 2i root 5. And again, problems like this, or the ones with like your numbers that are obviously least and greatest, should be written least to greatest, or I will take off a point. Okay, number 10. Really, you can decide if you want to factor them or not. You can always try to factor it if you'd rather factor than do quadratic formula. A times c is negative 6, b is 1. What multiplies to give you negative 6 and adds to give you 1? Positive 3 and negative 2, right? Yeah, so this one is factorable. So we can factor this one. So we know that we could do the box. First term goes in the first box. Last term goes in the last box. And I just found my split b. So positive 3x, negative 2x. And then we GCF it. So GCF between 2 and 3. Well, just a reminder, x is always going to go here and here. This is negative, so this is going to be negative. This is positive, so this is going to be positive. And 2 is prime, therefore if 2 does not go into 3, so this is just 1. 2 does not go into 3, so this is just 1. Now 2 does go into 2, so this is 2. 3 does go into 3, so this is 3. So we have x minus 1 and 2x plus 3. Now remember, because of the zero factor property, we separate and we set them both equal to 0. So plus 1, x equals 1. Minus 3, divide by 2, divide by 2. And we get negative 3 over 2, comma 1. Now, if you solved that one a different way, you could have used quadratic formula. That would be totally fine. So on this next one, let's use quadratic formula because 1 times 10, there's nothing that multiplies to give you 10 and adds to give you 9. Okay, so so this gives me negative 9. 2 times 1 is 2. And then again, we type just what's under the house. We get 41. Now, 41 is prime, so we cannot break that down. And I want you to realize that 9 over 2 doesn't simplify, and this is technically, you could put a 1 and it doesn't change. 1 over 2 does not simplify. Therefore, this does not simplify, and we are just going to rewrite it once with a plus, once with a minus. You don't have to write the 1. I know I did, but you don't have to. Okay, on number 12, I think of not quadratic formula, square root method again, because this is squared and there's no other x's, so I can solve that route. How do I get rid of a 1/3? Well, it's the same thing as dividing by 3. The opposite of the dividing by 3 is multiplying by 3, so if I multiply both sides by 3, that cancels this, and we're left with 3x minus 7 squared equals 15 times 3, I believe, is 45. Yes. And now we can square root both sides because we have what's squared alone. So square root, we get 3x minus 7 equals, don't forget your positive and negative, and 45 is not a perfect square, so we have to break it down. So 45, 5 and 9, and then 3 and 3. So 3 matches, 5 does not. So we have 3 root 5. We're going to add 7 to both sides. And we get 3x equals 7 plus or minus 3 root 5. And we're going to divide by 3. And remember, we always break apart right here. 7 over 3 doesn't simplify, but these 3's cancel. So my final answer is 7 over 3 minus root 5 and 7 over 3 plus root 5. Okay, now this one I don't feel like doing the box. I don't know if it does factor or not, so we're just going to go ahead and do quadratic formula. It equals 0, so A is 5, B is 3, C is 9. So 3, 3, 5, 5, and 9. So this becomes negative 3, plus or minus the square root of something. 2 times 5 is 10. And then we type just what's under the house. So we get 3 squared minus 4 times 5 times 9. And we get negative 171. Okay, You can see if 171 breaks down. It does. I just tested 3, and it goes into it 57 times. Now, I don't know if you remember, but 57 is not prime, so let's keep going. It does, so 3 and 19, but 3 and 19 are prime. So 19 is prime. So we have a 3 that comes out. So we have negative 3 plus or minus 3, and don't forget your I, root 19 over 10. Nothing here simplifies. 3 over 10 does not simplify, so that is my answer. So we have negative 3 minus 3i root 19, and negative 3 plus 3i root 19. Okay, last 2 are word problems. Okay, this one says Kathy jumped off a cliff into the ocean. Her height as a function of time could be modeled by this function, where t is time in seconds and h is height in feet. Okay, so it's already filled in for us, and we know that t is our time in seconds and h is her height. So it says, how many seconds did it take Kathy to reach the water? Well, I want you to realize when you reach the water, the height is 0. She's no longer in the air, so her height is 0. So that's going to be 0 equals negative 16t squared plus 16t plus 480. And now we have A, B, and C already, because it's already equal to 0. Negative 16, 16, and 480. So we simplify it one piece at a time, and we get negative 16. This gives me negative 32. And then we type just what's in the house. And we get 30976. Now we're going to type it once with a plus and once with a minus. Because this is a word problem, we don't have to break it down like we do when it's not a word problem. And you're typing it exactly the way you have it written. So that gives me 6. And that gives me negative 5. Well, you can't have negative 5 seconds. So the answer is 6 seconds. Okay, let's look at B. It says, when was Kathy 300 feet away from the water? So that's when H is 300. So we have 300 equals negative 16t squared plus 16t plus 480. So we're going to subtract 300 from both sides because we have to have it equal to 0 first. We have 0 equals negative 16t squared plus 16t minus, or actually plus 180. Yeah. So A, B, C. So we have negative B plus or minus. So again, type just what's under the house. We get 11,776. So again, now you're going to type it once with a plus, once with a minus. So negative 16 minus and once with a plus. So I get a negative answer and a positive answer. It says round to the nearest tenth, so that would be right here. Which I want you to realize the 9 makes that 8 round up. Oop, you can't see it. That 9 makes the 8 round up, so that becomes 3.9. And now it becomes negative 2.9. Well, again, you can't have negative time, so this is 3.9 seconds. Okay, last one. Number 15. If a toy rocket is launched vertically upwards from ground level, okay, with an initial velocity of 128, I want you to realize that's just extra information. It's already plugged into the formula for you. Then its height after t seconds is given by this equation if air resistance is neglected. Okay, well, we're not scientists, so we don't need to worry about that. When was the rocket 200 feet high? So we know we want h equal 200. So 200 equals negative 16t squared plus 128t. So we would do minus 200, and now we have our A, B, and C. Okay, and then we simplify the pieces, so we get negative 128 plus or minus square root of something, negative 32. And let's type just what's under the house. We get 3584. And now we type the whole thing. And it says round to the nearest. It doesn't tell us, so we can do tenths or hundredths, doesn't matter. We'll just do tenths like the other one said. So this we would do 5.9. And then 2.1. So this one has two answers. They both make sense. So we have 5.9 and 2.1 seconds.